Click, call, or visit a Spectrum store today.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
I'm Sharon Tazwell. Here's your Spectrum News at 90. Wall Street taking a major hit Monday as a market sell-off intensifies. Stocks under pressure as investors worry over a possible recession due to tariffs implemented by the Trump administration. Meanwhile, retaliatory tariffs by China on U.S. agricultural products are now in effect. And Ontario is adding a 25% increase on electricity exports to the U.S. with tough words from Ontario's leader.
It's one person that's caused this problem, and that's President Trump. So let's sit down at the table and let's start working on a new USMCA deal.
Top U.S. officials will meet separately with Russian and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia this week, setting up another round of high-stake peace negotiations. 2 senior officials from Kyiv say Ukraine will propose a limited ceasefire with Russia, covering the Black Sea and long-range missile strikes. Ukraine is reportedly ready to sign a mineral deal with the U.S.
We have to have peace, and I'm doing this. Money is one thing. The big thing, human life.
Federal immigration authorities arrested a Palestinian activist who played a prominent role in Columbia University's protest against Israel. Mahmoud Khalil, a graduate student at Columbia until this past December, is currently being detained at a facility in Louisiana and facing deportation. That's your Spectrum News at 90.
You are traveling this evening, much of the country looking pretty quiet. The exception, the Carolinas dealing with some heavy rain this evening into tonight. But much of the country feeling the warmth. The next few days, the West Coast will deal with a storm system and then severe weather. That is a possibility later on this week for the Mississippi River Valley, also into the south. We'll talk about that in more detail coming up this half hour.
New fears on Wall Street Monday, and it's having a direct impact on American wallets. U.S. stocks fell sharply again as investors grow increasingly fearful about tariffs and a potential recession. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sharon Tazwell. All 3 major indexes once again closing in the red, with the Nasdaq suffering its worst day since 2022. The tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 4%, dropping more than 720 points. The S&P shed 2.7%, and at one point hit its lowest level since September. The Dow Jones dropped just over 2%. Now, the drop comes as China slaps new tariffs on agricultural imports from the U.S. And the Canadian province of Ontario places a surcharge on electricity sold in the U.S. Spectrum's Karina Capabianca is in Washington with more.
China on Monday imposed new tariffs of 15% on imports of U.S. chicken and wheat and 10% on U.S. beef and soybeans. And the leader of Canada's most populous province, Ontario, imposed a 25% charge on exports of electricity to America, also in retaliation for President Trump's trade policies.
Things were going fine. Everything was moving forward. Market was going up a little bit. Everyone was optimistic. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he wants to attack his closest neighbor and ally. You don't attack your number one customer and expect the results that he thought were going to happen.
The trade war began when President Trump announced 20% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada and tariffs on imports from China. Now the president is not ruling out the possibility that his trade policies could cause a recession, but he says any short-term pain would be worth the long-term gain of increased manufacturing jobs as companies shift production from overseas to the U.S. He also touted the money the tariffs would generate, although most economists say the cost of the tariffs will be passed on to U.S. consumers.
All I know is this: we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch. We're going to have jobs. We're going to have open factories. It's going to be great.
The man chosen to succeed Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister of Canada said Canada is not about to back down.
He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed.
On Capitol Hill, a moderate House Republican urged the president to differentiate between allies like Canada and Mexico and more adversarial nations like China.
I like free trade. Free trade's good for consumers, but when one country's not being fair, then we have to match it. And so I'm generally supportive of what the president's trying to do towards China.
All eyes will be on Wall Street over the next several days and weeks. More down days like Monday could increase political pressure on the president to rethink his trade policies. In Washington, Karina Capabianca, Spectrum News.
On Capitol Hill, President Trump is urging Republicans to stay united and pass a stopgap government funding proposal ahead of Friday's deadline to avoid a shutdown. However, House Democratic leadership is calling on members to oppose the plan. And as Spectrum's Aaron Kelly reports, the legislation faces a key vote Tuesday.
The CR will pass.
What if it gets blocked?
I don't think it's going to get blocked.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says legislation known as a continuing resolution to keep the federal government funded and prevent a partial shutdown on Friday will pass the House on Tuesday. This, even though at least one House Republican and nearly all Democrats in the chamber appear firmly against it.
We know that there is $6 billion in defense spending increase. That is not something the majority of Democrats, including myself, are in support of, especially when they are making $13 billion in cuts to programs that people care about.
One Republican is vowing to oppose the legislation, Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a frequent critic of how much the government spends. Massie posted online, quote, "Unless I get a lobotomy Monday that causes me to forget what I've witnessed the past 12 years, I'll be a no." With Republicans holding a paper-thin majority, Johnson cannot afford to lose any more GOP votes to pass the measure. The 99-page plan would increase spending for defense and U.S. immigration and customs enforcement and reduce other spending below last year's levels. President Donald Trump is urging Republicans to get behind the measure, but says a government shutdown is still a possibility.
The Democrats want that. They want to destroy the country. So I can't tell you, but it could happen.
The top House Democrat, Representative Hakeem Jeffries, is urging his members to vote no. They want to stop the president and his ally, Elon Musk, from cutting programs already funded by Congress. Lawmakers have until Friday night to avoid a partial government shutdown. In Washington, Aaron Kelly, Spectrum News.
The LA County District Attorney says he does not support resentencing for the Menendez brothers. He says they repeatedly lied about why they killed their parents with shotguns back in 1989. Lyle and Eric Menendez are currently serving life in prison without parole. Spectrum's Ariel Wessler joins me now to break it all down. Ariel, the DA already said he opposes a new trial for the brothers.
Yeah, Sharon, LA County DA Nathan Hochman made that statement last month. The new trial was one of 3 possible pathways for the brothers to be freed from prison. A resentencing is the second. Hochman says he will move forward on a resentencing motion set for next week, but wants the court to withdraw the previous DA's motion for resentencing. During Monday's press conference, Hochman told reporters the brothers had not exhibited, quote, insight and complete responsibility into the dozens of lies he says they have told for the last 30 years, including claims of sexual abuse. He said their repeated argument that they killed their parents in self-defense does not match the facts of the case that showed premeditated steps to plan the killings, making them look like a gang hit.
If they go ahead and finally come clean with the court, with the public, with the DA's office, with their own family members, and acknowledge all these lies, and then can be said to have fully and completely accepted responsibility for their actions. In the future, the court can weigh these new insights.
He went on to say prosecutors would do the same. Many relatives of the Menendez brothers have backed the push for them to be released, one even calling for Hochman to be removed from the case, citing bias. A resentencing hearing is still scheduled for March 20th and 21st. Sharon.
Ariel, of course, interest in this case surged following the release of a recent Netflix documentary and also a drama series. You mentioned 2 out of 3 pathways for the Menendez brothers release. What is the third?
So that would be clemency from California Governor Gavin Newsom. He's directed a state parole board to conduct a risk assessment investigation to see if the Menendez brothers pose a threat to the public. Newsom could commute their sentences at any time, but Sharon, the governor previously indicated he would defer any decision to the local courts and prosecutors.
All right, Ariel Wessler in California. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Immigration authorities arresting a prominent Palestinian activist who helped lead anti-war protests at Columbia University. We're on the ground at the Ivy League University with the latest. Just ahead.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
I really am in the middle of nowhere. Every day is different. Chores, come on, homeschooling, and then I fit in the rug business. I just got a new batch of rugs that I'd love to show you. I have a website, and a lot of what I do is sharing my home life. Mommy's leaving. Reliable, high-speed internet is the foundation of our business. Spectrum was great. They went out of their way to make sure that I was okay and I was taken care of. Shoo! And that's the awesomeness of having Spectrum.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/therightseat.
Welcome back to this round of your weather on the ones. Meteorologist Alan Auglis here. Spring is in the air for much of the country, but we're also tracking some active weather for the West Coast. Rain and snow from the northwest all the way down towards Southern California, and severe weather. We're tracking that. That's a possibility late week for the Midwest. But today, pretty quiet for most of the country. However, we're seeing a low pressure through South Carolina. That is some good news. Of course, they've had the wildfires dealing with the drought. So in Georgia, South Carolina, pockets of heavier rainfall today. Where they need the rain, we have red flag warnings for the Plains states, the upper Midwest. You combine low humidity and gusty winds, there is the risk for wildfires to spread very quickly in these areas through the evening hours. But look at the numbers across the country the next 3 days. Louisville into the 70s, spring in the air there. Dallas into the 80s for Wednesday. Wednesday and Thursday. Chicago jumping up into the 50s Wednesday and Thursday. Even Denver midweek climbing up to around 70 degrees. Tracking that upper level low pressure off the west coast, Southern California. This is going to bring some rain and mountain snow your way by tomorrow. So Tuesday morning, it's just offshore. It starts to pinwheel inland as we work our way into the midday and afternoon with some pockets of heavier rain and higher elevation snow there. And again, good news. A lot of the country dealing with drought conditions, and especially towards the desert southwest and also Southern California, still severe and extreme drought there. So this rainfall is welcome through Tuesday. We're looking at 1 to possibly 2 inches of rain there. I'll be tracking that risk for severe weather later on this week. Coming up with your next Weather on the Ones, I'll have that in less than 10 minutes. See you in just a little bit.
What you need to know. China and Canada retaliate against President Trump's tariffs. China imposed an additional charge on key agriculture imports from the U.S., while the leader of Ontario, Canada, is charging 25% more for electricity to Americans. And according to multiple reports, NASA will soon start shutting down offices, including the office of its chief scientist. The layoffs are part of the president's larger effort to reduce the federal workforce. And the Supreme Court agrees to decide whether state and local governments can enforce laws banning conversion therapy for LGBTQ+ children. That's what you need to know. Developing this evening, a U.S. district judge has blocked the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, who was arrested by immigration authorities. The prominent Palestinian activist helped lead last spring's protests at Columbia University. He was being held in a facility in Louisiana. Noralane Khawaja joins us from Columbia University. Noralane, what are you seeing on the ground there, and what can you tell us about Khalil?
Hi there, Sharon. Yeah, well, right now there's limited access to get to the university's campus today, and all of this over concerns and fears that the arrest could escalate into further protests. And Sharon, as you know, Khalil was one of the lead organizers of the pro-Palestinian protests that we saw on Columbia's campus last year, including the encampment. And, Khalil's lawyer, Amy Greer, according to her, she says that special agents from ICE arrested her client inside his university-owned apartment Saturday night, where he lives with his pregnant wife. He was then taken into custody. The attorney also says she spoke with one of the ICE agents over the phone during the arrest, who said they were acting on, State Department orders to revoke Khalil's student visa. But Khalil is in the U.S. as a green card holder and is a legal permanent resident. Khalil's lawyer saying in a statement that, they're going to vigorously be pursuing Mahmoud's rights in court, and that they see this as a terrible and calculated wrong against him, and that his ICE arrest and detention is part of the U.S. government's attacks on student activism and free speech, especially those who criticize Israel's war in Gaza. Meanwhile, in response to the arrest, a Department of Homeland Security spokesperson says that this is all a part of President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism, and that Khalil led activities aligned to Hamas, which of course is designated as a terrorist organization. Columbia University says, meanwhile, that law enforcement would need a judicial warrant to enter a residential university building, and at this time, it's not yet clear if those agents had one to arrest him. Well, I've been speaking to students here at Columbia University as well as community members about the arrest. Take a listen to what they had to say.
I currently go to SEPA, which is like 70% international students, so I know a lot of people are worried about ICE for that reason, especially in my program. And also I think under the current administration, it's especially worrying.
I think what's happening is a necessary correction to the things that have been going on, all the protesting and everything.
This move certainly sending shockwaves through the community, Sharon, and all of this coming on the heels of the Trump administration pulling, $400 million of federal funding from Columbia University.
And definitely a story we will continue to follow closely. Noralane Khawaja at Columbia University, New York City. Thank you. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to meet with Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia Tuesday to discuss peace talks. Senior Ukrainian officials say a Kyiv delegation will meet with Rubio to propose a ceasefire covering the Black Sea and long-range missiles and the release of prisoners. Officials tell the Associated Press the delegation is also ready to sign an agreement with the U.S. on access to rare earth minerals. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is also in Saudi Arabia, but is not expected to be part of the meeting. Some U.S. lawmakers say it's a mistake to not have Zelensky in the talks.
It's a terrible mistake not to have the Ukrainian leader in the talks. We've seen a history of this. I remember when the Trump administration was negotiating with the Taliban without the Afghan government, that really weakened the Afghan government thereafter.
Secretary of State Rubio says he is hopeful about having a productive meeting with the Ukrainians. Federal cuts for National Park Service's concerns. Just ahead on Spectrum News, how former and current employees are reacting.
For the millions of school-aged children across the country, the state of their schools can have a lasting impact on their health and well-being.
The majority of school districts aren't doing comprehensive regular water quality testing.
As CO2 levels rise in a space, cognitive function takes a direct decline.
We visit 2 school districts working to create safe and healthy environments for their students.
Watch Exploring Your Health, Curing Our Classrooms, available on the Spectrum News app.
Starting a business is hard. You have to stay connected at all times.
As we've been growing the studio, Spectrum's been there every step of the way. I'm always able to make the phone call that I need. I'm able to shoot that text message or that email. Every vital piece of equipment that we have here uses Spectrum.
Fast, reliable internet, starting at $40 a month, backed by the Spectrum commitment to keep your business connected.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now, my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
For another check of your weather on the ones. Meteorologist Alan Auglis here. In a lot of the country, you're feeling the warmth with temperatures 15, 20 plus degrees above average. The west, rain and mountain snow, and then there's a severe weather threat towards late Friday into Saturday for the Midwest and also the South. Today, a lot of us very quiet, hard pressed to find a cloud through the Midwest into southern portions of the plains, but towards South Carolina, North Carolina, some rain, welcome rainfall there with drought conditions. Of course, you've heard about the wildfires, so this really putting a dent in at least that situation. So this evening in the eastern, north, and South Carolina, some rain with low pressure moving offshore. By tomorrow, it's long gone. We have sunshine looking great for Tuesday for the southeast. However, the west, the Pacific Northwest, not so nice. Some rain, some mountain snow moving in by late Tuesday and continues into midweek as well. Also, Thursday and Friday, so a round of some active weather for the Pacific Northwest. But a lot of the country, you see the oranges and reds there, above average temperatures this week. That continues right into late week as well until colder air starts to work in behind the system by the weekend. So numbers for the eastern half of the country, from the Rockies to the East Coast, 15, 20 plus degrees above average for Tuesday in St. Louis. That trend will continue into Wednesday. 21 degrees warmer in St. Louis compared to normal, 25 degrees warmer than normal in Minneapolis, and then cold air starts to work in behind the storm system by late week into the west. As we look at the numbers, highs into the 70s for tomorrow in Louisville. That's nice. Almost 80 in Dallas, even 73 in D.C. We work our way into midweek. 70s for the Mid-South, also the Gulf Coast states, even upper 50s in Chicago. And notice that trend continues into Thursday as well. But towards late Friday and Saturday, this low pressure gets its act together. All forms of severe weather are expected for the Mississippi River Valley, especially towards Arkansas, western Tennessee, southern Missouri, late Friday and Friday night. And then that will extend south and east from Kentucky into Tennessee and also Alabama and Mississippi towards the weekend. We'll keep tracking that system for you closely this week.
Federal cuts to the National Park Service are sparking concern for those hoping to keep popular areas like the Channel Islands National Park in Southern California staffed and funded. Spectrum's Irina Karizada takes a closer look at what those cuts could mean for the national parks.
There's nothing like dive days for former Channel Islands National Park marine ecologist Keenan Chan, but recent federal cuts across the National Park Service cut his dream job with the park short after spending years as a seasonal worker.
I did hundreds of dives with Channel Islands National Park, spent a lot of time learning and, having that kind of deep knowledge and understanding of the islands.
Keenan is one of 1,000 National Park Service employees that were terminated back in mid-February as part of the Trump administration's effort to reduce the $36 trillion national debt. Now, Keenan's worried about what the future holds for long-term monitoring sites that kept tabs on the kelp forest, squid, lobster, and more in the area.
As it was, we were already working, at an understaffed level, right? And so now, working at an understaffed level, as well as now, having these impacts of additional terminations and cuts, it's hard to imagine the amount of work that the remaining employees are going to be able to accomplish.
On Wednesday, hundreds gathered outside the park on its 45th anniversary to rally against the recent cuts with concern about the future of national parks. Last year, the National Park Service set a new record with over 331 million park visits. Russell Gallipo is a board member with the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks and the former superintendent of the Channel Islands National Park. He says the cuts aren't new to the parks, but illegal activity like poaching will increase.
When we have government closures, and we're facing one possibly in the next week, we knew what happened during those government closures. We saw iconic species like Joshua trees cut down and used as firewood. The whole reason we have that park, Joshua Tree, is to protect the trees. So we will see things like that, increase poaching. We will also see, because we know the guardians aren't there.
Among the crowd, Ryan Gellert, the CEO of Patagonia. He says national parks should be off the political table.
Public lands are one of the best ideas that we've had as Americans. They're for everybody, owned by everybody, and I think they're arguably more under threat right now than they've been at any point in history.
For Keenan, he's hoping to find a way back to his dream job.
I don't know what the future holds in terms of where that will be, but I most certainly hope to continue to do that type of work.
A diverse community unifying to protect national parks. Zarina Karizada, Spectrum News.
I'm Sharon Tazwell. Thanks for watching. Your Spectrum News at 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
Friday nights, The Big Deal with Errol Lewis, where Spectrum News' local political journalists break down the most important issues shaping our nation.
Our journey towards improving mental health doesn't always present a clear path. Every Thursday on Your Mental Health, we listen to voices across our communities, discussing the challenges of everyday life and presenting accessible resources to guide us along the path to our well-being, providing hope and empowering choices that light the way to a healthier you.
Your Mental Health with Dr. Nicole Clark, Thursdays on Spectrum News Plus, available on all your favorite devices.
It's game time at the arena, and 20,000 fans are looking for a win. With an ultra-high-speed network and seamless Wi-Fi, fans can get in the door fast and share the game's best moments in real time. And with Spectrum Business committed to keeping them connected 100% of the time, they won't miss a second of the action. A secure, reliable connection from Spectrum Business means the fan experience is a guaranteed win.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Weather can be beautiful, inconvenient, and at times powerful. And it affects everything we do. At Spectrum News Plus, our weather experts update you with the information and the context you need so you can better plan your day. And we do it every 10 minutes. We're the calm in the storm. Weather on the Ones on Spectrum News Plus, exclusively on Spectrum. And get your weather anytime on the Spectrum News app. Spectrum News Plus, local stories, connecting communities. Streaming